reached a unanimous verdict. This was not a simple case. The two of you did not make it simple for us.
It is 4 o'clock and it looks like everyone is here. So we'll now call the public session for the Palm Desert City Council, successor to the Palm Desert Redevelopment Agency and the Housing Authority meetings to order. This is Thursday, August 25th, 2022. Were there any actions from closed session?
There were no reportable actions taken in closed session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we have roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Present.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Nistendi.
Here.
Councilmember Quintanilla.
Here.
Mayor Harnick.
Here.
All council members are present.
Thank you so much. We'll begin then with the Pledge of Allegiance from Councilmember Quintanilla and our inspiration from Councilmember Kelly.
If you are able, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And how much did you pay them?
Our words of inspiration come from Mahatma Gandhi. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. We give thanks for a staff serving the city of Palm Desert who live by these words. And we give thanks for the spirit of volunteerism among our residents, which defines our community. May we be inspired by their good examples as we strive to fulfill our callings this evening. Thank you.
Yes, so you're using the benefit of the service. You could never add.
Thank you.
It's not my-
Okay, I already asked for the report of closed session. We have no awards, presentations, or appointments, and we'll move to city manager comments, please.
Thank you, Mayor Harnik. I would like to invite our Public Works Deputy Director, Andy Ramirez, to provide a quick overview of the city's graffiti abatement program in Public Works. This is something where we get a lot of questions about this service on an annual basis, and Andy's prepared a short presentation for the council and public just to kind of share with what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Todd. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Andy Ramirez, Deputy Director of Public Works. Before you is our graffiti abatement program that is managed by Public Works. This is one of many programs that helps preserve our world-class city. Common question that we get is, how is graffiti reported? Well, there are various options for our residents and for staff alike. One is through cityofpalmdesert.org. As you can see on the screen, folks can go ahead and report an issue, practically any issue, including graffiti issues on our website. Also, residents are able to call City Hall. And one thing that I'm very pleased to share with you is that part of our program is a proactive daily inspection of our main corridors by city staff. As you can see here on this slide, we see about 3,470 proactive inspections that are caught in graffiti issues. And this is on any given year. We did a quick calculation over the past few years, and about 4,000 areas are abated each year. This next slide, as you see here, shows Ernesto Navarrete on Cabrillo Avenue, doing a fantastic job at quickly removing graffiti. On the next slide, our team takes great pride in making sure that every area that has graffiti is given the same attention to detail. Typically, abatement takes 30 to 60 minutes per site. Here we have Jesus Padilla, our very own Public Works maintenance worker, here underneath the bridge at the Washington Bridge in I-10. Here's a after slide of just the great work that the team does in ensuring that color matching preserves a very clean city. It's been told that benefits include an improved quality of life. Obviously, the aesthetics are a testament to that, a safer environment and reduction in crime. Here's a really neat picture of the truck and some of the materials that are used by our city staff, and also the city investment each year with one truck, one staff member that's primarily focused to the graffiti abatement and materials. The city invests approximately $157,000 plus each year in making sure that our world-class city is preserved. And finally, when folks use our online portal to report a graffiti issue, as soon as that is closed out, notifying party is then shared the news that their work order has been closed. This concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, please.
Thank you. Andy, great report. I got to tell you, I think with my colleagues are so appreciative of the hard work being done by staff to remove graffiti, to do it so vigorously and so quickly. It absolutely makes a big difference in quality of life. I want to focus for a second on the exception to the rule. Once in a while, I hear of either calls not being returned or multi-day delays in responding. And I do feel confidently that that is very much the exception to the rule. My question is, are we doing anything to follow up situations like that where we're not as responsive as our standard is to determine what happened so that it does not happen again?
Thank you for your question. I can tell you that if a phone call does come into the city and say, for instance, there's a major sand removal as of recent that will take up a lot of our time, we will be upfront and honest with our residents to let them know that we will get to it as quickly as possible. In any other given time, as you mentioned, staff is able to go ahead and abate within 24 to 48 hours max.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I think if I become directly aware of any exceptions to that, then I'll certainly pass it along so we can continue to strive to do as best a job as possible. But again, overall, amazing program, great work being done by staff, very much appreciated. Oh, one other quick thing. Did you mention the app Palm Desert in Touch as an effective way of reporting graffiti?
Yes, so
Okay.
not only can folks go onto the main website on the desktop, they have an option as well to download an app.
And you can also go to the App Store and get it.
That's right.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? I thank you for that information because I hear such great things about the response and the follow-up, especially those using the app. So thank you so much, and I so appreciate what it does for our community.
You're welcome. I'll make sure to share the kudos to the team.
And please let them know how much we appreciate, because again, the follow-up when people use the app, I've heard nothing but positive responses, how they follow up and that the problem is taken care of. So please convey that message.
You got it.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other comments from the city manager?
None at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move to mayor and council member reports and requests for action. And can we start with council member Kelly, please?
You may. It has been a busy summer, as tonight's agenda will reflect, but I have no items to raise at this time.
Okay, then we will then move to council member Quintanilla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This summer, there's been a lot of meetings, as Councilmember Kelly said, nothing reportable, but I will definitely bring anything up at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And council member Nastandi.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I have no reportable actions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And how about Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan?
What they said.
Okay, well, probably everyone's going, gosh, I hope we get one more of those, but you're not going to. During the summer, as everyone said, there's been a lot we've been doing. I did want to mention that there has been some really great results regarding CV Rail, bringing a train to the Coachella Valley. And we had some meetings. It was our Supervisor Perez, Mayor Middleton, and I went into LA to meet with Amtrak, the CEO flew out from Washington, DC, requested to meet with RCTC and the group, and there's good things coming. So there will be a time where we will be asking to hear your voices, and please support this effort, because as we go forward, of course, we have to go through the second level environmental impact report, environmental impact study, and we'll have to go through that second tier, and we'll need to hear from people on that, but we want that train. The other thing is a lot of work on broadband and connectivity is going on. And I was going to say transportation before, but it's a gray line between broadband and what we think of as regular transportation infrastructure. But there's a lot of great things happening. CBAG has the largest regional smart city program in place. And then with everything coming from the Southern California Association of Governments and the funds out there federally and statewide for connectivity and broadband, recognizing how important it is. There's good things coming. So that's exciting, and I did want to share it. I have one request, and that is, I know with Unite PD, with Unite Palm Desert, we have moved some money back where it originated. We started Unite Palm Desert at a time of crisis due to COVID, and it served us well. I just want to make sure that we make the most of that program. I don't want us to let it go by the wayside. It recently received an award. I wish I could speak more about that, but I don't know all the details. But it was recognized for the important work it did within our community. I just want to make sure that we don't let that go by the wayside, especially since we have it all over signs and sides of buildings. So let's make the most of that and continue serving our community with Unite Palm Desert. And that's all I have. So we will go to non-agenda public comments. And are there any, oh wait, I'm sorry. Can I have housekeeping remarks? Thank you.
Yes, for those on Zoom,
Thank
for
you.
those on Zoom, if you want to participate in public comment, please click on the raised hand button on your screen or smartphone. If you're joining the meeting by dialing in on your phone, please hit *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute yourself. Please keep your comment to no more than 3 minutes and begin by stating your full name for the record. And Madam Mayor, on a separate note, I wanted to inform the council that staff is requesting item 2A related to the policy for use of city-owned facilities to be removed from the agenda, and it will return at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. So 2A in the action calendar. Okay, thank you. We will then remove that and continue it until we hear back. In the meantime, then are there any public comments for non-agendized items? And I see none. Oh, wait, I see one. Okay. And I don't see, wait, maybe I do. Oh, okay. I see Alex Cruz. Please be advised. If you provide your name and address, that would be helpful. And remember, you have 3 minutes to comment on the item.
Hello, my name is Alex Cruz. Thank you for hearing my comments today. And I live on Primrose Drive. I want to call in today about my concern with public transportation and the engineering of the streets, certain streets especially. I attended the last Planning Commission meeting, and we were talking about the, I guess, the affordable housing project that is coming in next to the freeway and Cook Street. And my concern there is just about how we kind of have no public transit in that area. The 5 line by Sunline ends right there at the college. And the people that move into this affordable housing project are going to need more than that. So, and the Planning Commission was talking about how Sunline is being really lagging lately. So I just want to, I don't think they're ever going to catch up. So I think at this point, we might as well just have our own bus service. As a city, we can have like a free trolley that takes people around the entire town instead of waiting for Sunline to improve, because it's been years now. And they I don't think they're ever going to improve. And also the engineering of the streets in that whole area, we have too many lanes. All the streets around the university there have 3 lanes, and there's never anybody there. So I never see any traffic or the need for 3 lanes in the first place. And the people who move into this affordable housing are going to have dangerous roads surrounded all over. So So that's my concern. Hopefully we could just convince the engineers to reduce the lanes to 2 lanes. We don't need 3 lanes. That's practically a highway in the middle of our city, and highways do not belong here. So that is my concern. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Cruz. And I see Councilmember Kelly's handed up. Did you wish to provide a short comment?
Yes, if Mr. Cruz will please email his contact information to the clerk, I'll make sure that he receives information about Sunline's on-demand ride-share service in the corridor along Cook Street.
Okay. Thank you. And additionally, when we have that email address, the city itself can respond to you on some of the issues you cited. So thank you so much for speaking up, Mr. Cruz.
And Mayor Harnick, if I could provide the clerk's email address. It is cityclerk@cityofpalmdesert.org.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay. Are there any other comments on non-agendized items? Okay, I see none. So we will then move to the consent calendar. Are there any public comments on items on the consent calendar? Any comments on the consent calendar? And I see none. Okay, so I'll move to the council. Are there any items that anyone would like to pull or comment on?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I second and would like to pull W.
You'll pull, I'm sorry?
Item W.
W. Okay, and I see another hand up. Yes, Councilmember Kelly?
E, please.
E, and I see Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Yes, if we could pull H as in hotel, please.
H, okay. Thank you. And just for the record, the consent calendar is, I'm just going to go ahead and read this. All matters listed are considered routine and may be approved by one motion. And the public may comment, though they did not today, on any items. And we do have 3 pulls. So can we have a motion to move the balance?
I make a motion to approve the balance.
Thank you.
And I
Is there a
second.
And there's a second. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Nestandi,
Yes,
Councilmember Quintanilla,
Aye.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Great, thank you. So we'll take these in alphabetical order. We'll start with E, please. And that.
Yes.
Yes.
Briefly, this pertains to our appointed voting delegates at the upcoming League of California Cities annual conference. I have recently learned that a family circumstance will preclude me from attending. And so I would suggest that, and we also recently learned that the mayor will be able to attend. So I would suggest that we promote Councilmember Karina Quintanilla to the designated voting delegate and make the mayor the alternate. And with those changes, I'll move adoption.
Okay, great. Why don't we, is there a second on that?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, can we have roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Nestandi,
Yes,
Councilmember Quintanilla,
I am honored and aye.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, great. And then we'll go to H. And we have, would you like a presentation by?
No, I think I can just express my concern if that's okay, Mayor.
Please do.
All right, the recommendation from staff is to make 3 appointments to vacancies on city committees and commissions. One of those appointments, number 1, is to the Architectural Review Commission, which currently has 7 members. We have heard back from current members on ARC indicating their preference that instead of appointing additional members, that the size of that commission go from 7 to 5. I personally believe that that recommendation has merit. And my suggestion is that we pull recommendation number 1 and move approval on 2 and 3 at this time and bring back reconsideration of whether or not ARC should be reduced in size from 7 members to 5.
Question?
Yes, Councilmember Nastandi.
Councilmember Jonathan, or I should say Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, what is the rationale from the board wanting to decrease? What's been the issue?
Yeah, the main issue that they expressed, as I understand it, is that with 7 members, there's a lot of chatter and a lot of feedback and duplication of comments, and it prolongs the meetings and makes it more difficult for the applicant to move their project forward, which of course has been a concern of all of ours. So I think what they're seeking to accomplish is streamlining the process, and that they believe that ARC can be as effective and more efficient by going down from 7 to 5. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm not yet,
please.
and
I'm
just to make
sorry.
it clear, I'm not, unless people want to do it, I'm not necessarily moving that we do that at this time. I'm just saying that we take their request into consideration at this time. Thank you.
Excuse me, Councilmember Quintanilla, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, if I can get some historical context of, was it 5 at one point? Has it always been 7? I know that we evolve. And so how has that looked, and what will it look like again if we should adopt? Thank
you. Okay, and can I have Councilmember Kelly?
I have concerns about pulling this proposed appointment in response to some informal input. It's not on record any place. I appreciate the desire to be responsive to the current members, but the individual that we propose to appoint in this agenda item possesses a kind of expertise that we as a council explicitly identified as important for the ARC. So I don't think this is the right time to take up the issue of the committee size. I think we should proceed with this appointment, which all of us had great enthusiasm for.
I would like to make some comments. I have also heard from commissioners regarding this issue. I've also received abundant input from staff, from applicants, and I have watched the meetings. And from what I can see is that the information I have received from all those sources will help us inform our decision as we go forward. The applicant that we are talking about perhaps appointing today, as Councilmember Kelly said, was one that brought forth some information and expertise that does not really exist at this time on ARC. I would recommend that we go forward with appointing that person and understanding that that will put us in a position there would be 6 appointees. And we know an even number doesn't work, but perhaps something we've been doing lately might work. And that might be that we could have 5 members at this point. This is all for discussion later. And I recommend everyone watch the meetings and listen to applicants, listen to commissioners, and listen to staff so that we make the best decision. But the possibility exists with 6 that one could be an alternate. But that's a possibility, and it is for discussion at another time. But I would recommend today going ahead with that appointment because the gentleman that we interviewed brought a specific area of expertise that will be tremendously informative and a great asset to the process. As far, I have to make a comment, as far as there being too much chatter and too much talk, we all know how to cut our comments short. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you. And that's fine. I get it and I understand, perspectives that are different than mine, and that's fine. Just for the record, the comments of the ARC commissioners, as I understand, were very much on record because I think they were part of the minutes of their last meeting, if I'm not mistaken. That's my understanding. And I believe that in appointing this applicant, we do go to 6, but it was indicated in that meeting that one of the members would likely resign should that happen. So we may have an opportunity to reconsider and keep it at 5 at that point. I hope the council will consider that. As you all know, our planning commission has 5 members and it works just fine. ARC is very similar to planning commission. And so I can see it likely will not happen today, but I hope this council will consider that for the future. Thank you.
Councilmember Quintanilla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The question that I have is more along the lines of, we've seen when the appointment terms expire, but I don't think that the community is aware of that. So if we can let people know there will be openings instead of these are fixed and no one can join and it's cut off. So we know that as people retire, they move away, there will be other opportunities, and perhaps at those times it'll be a different discussion. But I think that different perspectives strengthen our city. And yes, it may be a little bit longer, but discussion is the business of the city. And I think that if no one else is against it, I honestly think we should move forward.
Taking that as a motion, I second it.
Okay. Then we have a motion and a second. Can we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Nay.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Nestandi.
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla.
Aye.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you. Okay, now we will move to W. Let's pull that up. Okay, W is an amendment to contracts. Trepepi Smith. Amendment to contracts with Trepepi Smith and Associates for ranked choice voting and advisory Measure B informational campaign services. And I see Councilmember Kelly's hand up, please.
I was not the person who pulled this, but I meant to. So thank you. Was it you, Councilmember Quintanilla?
Yes, indeed.
I meant to, for this reason, the items that we as a council enthusiastically asked staff previously to contract with some outside expertise to assist in educating the public about ranked choice voting. Because it doesn't exist anyplace else in our region, it will be entirely new and it has potential to be confusing with folks. This item suggests extending that contract to Measure B, the advisory measure as to whether we should expand the number of districts in Palm Desert. My immediate answer is no. We should not extend the contract because the circumstances are quite different. We have some neighboring cities that do have 5 districts. It's not a strange concept for people. And so I don't think it requires the same degree of outside expertise for education. I also, having looked at the draft documents, it's my perception that it would be problematic to ask someone from outside the city to draft materials for us on this topic. It's very clear from our past discussions that we have a division within the council as to whether people should vote yes or should vote no. And it's very, very easy when drafting materials to accidentally raise the umbrage of one side or the other. So I think it's a problematic topic for us to seek outside help with. My suggestion would be that instead of extending the contract, we as a council appoint a subcommittee with one person on each side of the fence to help staff or give staff some feedback as basic material might be drafted for the website or for any press release. If we keep it in-house, I think we'll do a better job of making sure that no one's surprised by what gets published.
Thank you. I see Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, but go ahead.
That's okay. I think Councilmember Quintanilla was waiting, so I'll defer to her.
Yeah, I did too. But things flipped around on my screen.
Yeah, her hand went down and now it's back up. So
okay,
No worries.
Councilmember Quintanilla, please.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem. I pulled this one because I just wanted to have I had a question on the radio ads and which different, which stations were chosen, in particular the Spanish station out of the ones in the area. I wanted to know which is the concentration. So again, staff answered all my questions. That is one that popped up today. But in response to Councilmember Kelly, I think that we need outside neutral verbiage because of how strongly we disagree here. I do firmly believe that it has to be external and neutral. We have so many contracts that come from out of the region, and it's about education. It's about voter education, and it's something new. It is something new, and I don't think that we haven't been able to agree at this point, and I think that it needs to be external and neutral.
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, please.
Yeah. Look, Proposition B from a city perspective is a hornet's nest. I prefer to see the city stay out of it. So Councilmember Kelly, you had me, on your side until the very end. And so I would concur that we should not spend money to educate our residents about Proposition B. I have trust and faith in our residents, and I believe that they will educate themselves to the extent they feel necessary to make a knowledgeable and educated decision about how to vote in this matter, as they do for council members and other issues on their ballot. So I would prefer to not have the city spend any funds on a public information campaign. So I would strike number 2 and leave it at that.
Okay, are there any other comments? And I see Councilmember Kelly's hand is up, and I see Councilmember Nastandi.
If we could truly count on neutral material, that's necessarily appealing. The difficulty is that neutrality is in the eye of the beholder. And my concern is that one or another of us would react to something coming out from the city and have the perception that it's not in fact neutral. And that would be problematic. It would put a stain on a process that we hope will be an open and transparent and non-controversial process. And Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, I did not mean to suggest that we develop any elaborate in-house materials. I just thought designating 2 people could be a help to staff if they need to publish brief information about what's on the ballot consistent with the city attorney's neutral summation. So they might not be called upon. I just thought it would be good for us to anticipate a potential need by appointing such a subcommittee.
Okay, Councilmember Nastandi.
Okay, yeah, so I'm going back to the consent item W, and the recommendation that we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Are we talking about all 4 or just the one related to advisory measure B? I've lost the train of comments with everybody.
We're talking about 2.
Okay, so
Extend-
just 2.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
And not 4?
Well, I guess yeah, there's no cost associated with 4, but 4 relates to 2. That's what I should say, right? 2 and 4 go together.
Well, and yes, here's the point. If conceptually we don't think 2 is a good idea, then 4 is off the table.
Correct. There we go. Yes. Yeah, so 2 and 4 go together, but we're still going to approve 1 and item 1 of this to help explain ranked choice voting, because I firmly believe we need to explain ranked choice voting. And I'm open to hear my fellow colleagues' comments on the other issue under W.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, please.
Yeah, I didn't hear any objection to number 1, so I'm sensing there's unanimous support for number 1. We're just talking about whether to enter the fray with item 2, which is Proposition B. So Councilmember Kelly, I didn't want to jump in there, but I had a question for you about your comments. You're suggesting that the subcommittee of 2 be simply available as a resource to staff should they need it, and that they shall not be assigned any other duties or empowered with any other functions. Is that correct? Okay. I can live with that. And I do want to point out that we do have an objective analysis of the proposition that has come out from our legal counsel. So I think we already took the necessary step of providing objective clarification, and hopefully not much more is needed. But now that I understand what you're proposing, Councilmember Kelly, I have no objection.
Okay, Councilmember Quintanilla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Going back to the idea of potentially having the subcommittee, I'm not sure I understood, Mayor Pro Tem, that we could have the subcommittee, but it would still only be to provide verbiage to staff and not necessarily input. So I'm curious if that's what I'm understanding, what the point of the subcommittee is.
No, as I understand and what I can support is that subcommittee, Councilmember Quintanilla, is simply available to staff should the staff have questions. So, for example, if there are questions about anything that the staff intends to disseminate to our residents and they want some feedback, they could use that subcommittee as a resource, but that would be it. I mean,
Precisely.
Yeah. Does that make sense, Councilmember Quintanilla?
It does. It does. My question or concern then would be, would there only be that one convening, and how long would that be? I just have a lot of questions because our different subcommittees have different functions and work at different intervals. So I think that perhaps we can move that one to a following meeting while we have more time to get information from our city clerk as to how that would work. I'm open to the idea of discussing it further, but I have questions on how this subcommittee would operate.
I think characterizing it as a subcommittee is where we're tripped up. So Councilmember Kelly.
Yes, and I apologize. I got this discussion started clearly without being precise. There are some deadlines coming up, and clearly we have sensitivities around this issue. So my goal was simply to name 2 people, one on each side, who could be on call for the city clerk if something comes up and staff wants some feedback from a representative council member from each side as to whether there are going to be any sensitivities about that item such that it needs to be put on hold, or if it is non-controversial and move forward. It's not meant to be a formal subcommittee with a scheduled meeting, just naming two people to be on call in case some deadlines come up between meetings to help staff navigate a topic where we clearly do have some sensitivities.
Okay, Councilmember Kelly. No? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Okay, thank you. Let me try this. Like to move for approval of staff recommendation item number 1 and number 3, and omit item 2 and 4. And in addition, to authorize the mayor to appoint, call it a subcommittee for lack of better term, of 1 council member from each side of Proposition B, so a total of 2, to serve as a resource and remain available to staff should they need feedback.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Nestandi,
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla,
Aye.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes,
Motion passes 5-0.
thank you very much. Okay, I know it doesn't feel like it, but now we're moving to the action calendar. And we are going to skip item A. It was pulled by staff, and we'll go right to B, award a contract to Interwest Consulting, Inc. from Paris, California for planning and design for the North Sphere Regional Park in the amount of $1,230,095.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Andy Ramirez, Deputy Director of Public Works. Before you is a staff recommendation to award the North Sphere Regional Park Planning and Design Contract to Interwest Consulting Group. Today's presentation will cover preliminary town hall meetings, the RFP process, depth of park designers, engineering staff, and extensive public engagement in developing regional and community parks in California and other states. For the remainder of our presentation, I would like to introduce my teammates, Randy Chavez and Sean Muir from our Community Services Division.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Honorable Mayor, City Council members. Staff has performed a comprehensive review process to determine the best qualified consultant for this project. And Public Works has prepared a brief story map presentation to show the process in further detail. If the council is amenable to it, we would like to share the presentation.
Please.
I would like to hand it over to Sean Muir, Management Analyst in the Public Works Department.
Thank you, Randy. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'll be taking you through a brief overview of the selection process that was used to make the recommendation to award Interwest the planning and design contract for the North Sphere Regional Park. First, let's go over a little bit of background as to the park location. Originally, the park was planned on a 27-acre site as part of the Millennium Specific Plan. Please note this map is not to scale, but we'd like to show you the location. Here's the Genesis development. The Parks and Recreation Commission formed a subcommittee to assist with the park planning process. At the first meeting, they discussed the site's limitations in size and configuration. So the City Council directed staff to explore alternative park sites to address these issues and the impacts that the surrounding residents that a large regional park may create. Staff identified a 35 to 40 acre site on Frank Sinatra Drive that was suitable for consideration. A town hall meeting was also held on June 28th to hear input from Millennium area residents. Excuse me. Staff received positive feedback from residents on a more passive park for the Millennium's development site. The alternative site sits on a 170 acre parcel that's owned by the successor agency. This is in the location of the University Neighborhood Specific Plan. So you can see here the original park site compared to the 170 acre parcel that may be considered for an alternative park site. Now we can go to the RFP process. Staff developed and released a request for proposals on April 6th. The RFP was crafted to select a consultant that has capability of designing a large regional park and would provide high quality public engagement. Public engagement, regional park experience, and value were the primary qualities staff were looking for. The first mandatory pre-proposal meeting was held and 16 consulting firms were in attendance. An updated RFP was released when the alternative site was identified, and a second mandatory pre-proposal meeting was held. 4 consultants attended that meeting and 4 proposals were received for the project. The pre-proposal meetings were valuable tools in identifying the consultants that would truly be committed to this project. During the second meeting of the Parks and Recreation Subcommittee, the proposals were scored using the criteria outlined in the RFP. At that time, Herman Design Group received the highest score. Updates were shared regularly with the Parks and Recreation Commission, and the Commission agreed that either Herman Design Group or the second ranking consultant, Interwest, would be qualified for the project, and that staff should select the best firm based on their research. Interviews were conducted with the top 3 proposers: STK Architects, Inc., Interwest Consulting Group, Inc., and Herman Design Group. A financial review was also done to ensure the city receives the best value and a high level of service. This is where Interwest emerged as the top proposer. So let's talk more about Interwest. Staff scored the proposals separately after conducting the additional research, and Interwest was scored highest. This was due to several factors. First, Interwest interviewed very well. They were prepared with concise presentations. At the beginning of this presentation, I mentioned experience, public engagement, and value as core criteria for consultant selection. Interwest stood out because of their depth of in-house staff. They have 15 senior level registered civil engineers specializing in large-scale grading, stormwater compliance, streets, infrastructure, and ADA compliance. 10 senior level project managers, 4 stormwater professionals, and 3 flood control engineers, led by Stuart McKibben, who has over 30 years experience as chief design and planning for the Riverside County Flood Control District, and 10 in-house registered traffic engineers with strong experience in traffic modeling and circulation designs, and 8 landscape architects and designers. From a public engagement standpoint, there are 9 in-house planners, all with vast experience in public engagement, 2 grants administrators, and 7 dedicated support staff members for marketing, web page development, and marketing collateral production, providing support for public engagement. Interwest's regional presence includes 4 offices in Southern California, 1 in Paris. And in the last 20 years, they've designed or design-built 50 parks, 16 of them regional scale, 23 community parks, 10 cultural parks, and many additional projects such as plazas, pocket parks, and trail systems. When references were contacted, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Finally, the results of the independent financial analysis showed Interwest was the best rate of the 4 proposals, although they were not the lowest in price. Since the submittal of the staff report for this recommendation, Interwest has worked with city staff to find potential cost savings in conceptual design, subconsultant fees, construction documents, and environmental analysis. And staff will incorporate any cost savings achieved through these negotiations in the final contract. I'd like to drill down on public engagement since it's so important for this project. Public engagement approach for Interwest focuses on defining and connecting with the community through surveys, public meetings and forums, workshops and focus groups, and web-based engagement. But the process doesn't end there. It's important to analyze that information and put it into a meaningful format to convey the results back to the city council and back to the community. Interwest brings experience to the table in designing and building regional parks. As I mentioned, they've worked on 16 regional scale parks in California and Florida and 50 parks in the past 20 years. Antelope Creek Park in Wood Lake, California is a 20-acre park converted from an olive grove that provides flexible event lawns, exercise and fitness trails, sports fields, basketball, volleyball, skate parks, educational gardens, and more. North Beach Oceanside Park in Miami Beach, Florida was a 30-acre renovation project to bring a contemporary approach to public space with improvements to safety, connectivity, and programming. And another example, Guy Davis Community Park focused on developing a multi-purpose sports field, fitness trail, and playground with an aquatic play expansion. Here we can see a dozen different examples on how Interwest has worked on large community parks. So next steps. The RFP was broken down into 4 tasks. Should the council decide to award the contract to Interwest, public engagement would begin this fall and continue for approximately 10 months. Conceptual design would come in during public engagement to get resident feedback on potential park layouts. Construction documents would be completed within 18 months. Once the city is prepared to move forward with construction, 5 months would be allocated to contractor bidding process, and then another 25 months set aside for construction support. With that, staff recommend Interwest for award of the North Sphere Regional Park Planning and Design contract, and we'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I just want to add very briefly to that report by commending staff as the council's liaison to Parks and Rec Commission. I can tell you that staff worked diligently and comprehensively to end up with the best choice possible. And the subcommittee of the Parks and Rec Committee, as well as other stakeholders, were very much a part of that process. And I just am very impressed with the entire process that has brought us to this point, and I'm very much looking forward to the next step. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Quintanilla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I echo some of the most of the comments of Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, and I would like to add that given the things that we've learned this year about resident engagement, that staff was proactive in mitigating some of those efforts. So great job, staff, of anticipating the needs and anticipating the questions that residents would have so that they had that up front and knew they were being heard. The concept that has been tossed around and the plan that has been, or just the partner that is being presented, makes me very excited for our families and residents for years to come. And all of the visitors to Palm Desert, we know that we've got the best parks, and here's a new one.
Are there any other comments or questions?
Move approval.
Well, and you know, I was remiss, I did not ask if there were any public comments, but I didn't see any either. Oh, wait, I do have a comment, and so excuse me for us going back here, but we need to hear from the public. This is under Hank Brown / Michael Stafford. Please remember to provide your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. You're muted.
There we go. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for letting me have an opportunity to speak. My name is Michael Stafford. I live in the Genesis development at 35429 Core Drive here in the Northern Sphere. So when we purchased our home here from GHA, we had the understanding that this park would be a passive park, meaning, interpretive trails, trees, landscaping, that type of thing. We had no concept that the park was being considered for ball diamonds and soccer fields. And so from a perspective of worried about the amount of traffic and the lights that are proposed for lighting these fields, we're very concerned about that. And we were concerned that the real purpose for the intent of that purpose wasn't really being fulfilled. So it's my understanding that this study is to determine if this lot actually fits the configuration for the design that Park and Recs have come up with. And if it doesn't, I guess there's a proposal to move it to a new location. So if it's not going to stay in its intention for an interpretive type park, then it would be my request that the city consider still installing some sort of green space in this area so we can at least enjoy that as an amenity. And furthermore, there was our understanding that we're going to install trees and different landscaping features to buffer the sound from the freeway as well as the train. So I'd still want that to be considered. So again, the question I have for this study that's going on with this contract you're considering is one of the potential outcomes of that to determine if it fits? And if it doesn't fit, is it to suggest moving it to a new location?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stafford. Are those your comments complete?
Yeah, I've actually written, I sent an email too with a little more details about it, but
yes,
the long and short of it is our neighborhood would prefer that to stay a passive park because that's the way it was presented to us. And that's what we think would add the most value to our property.
Okay, thank you. And we did receive, we all received the letter that you wrote.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. And I can assure you that's all part of the ongoing discussion. Councilmember Kelly, please.
Yes, I did want to assure Mr. Stafford that we've read his detailed comments, which are very much in sync with the direction of the RFP. And perhaps we could ask Ms. Muir to speak directly to that to give assurance that the direction we are moving in includes a passive park for the area adjacent to Genesis.
Thank you, Councilmember Kelly. Yes, I can speak to that. And the RFP, the first task that staff will begin working on hand in hand with Interwest will be the public engagement, and that will involve gaining feedback from folks like Mr. Stafford and folks in the Genesis community and Millennium area to determine what type of park will work best in that location and whether the 35 to 40 acre site south of that would be best suited for a larger regional sports park.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you. Now, there was a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
And I will second the motion.
And now
Mayor.
there's a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi.
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla.
Aye.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you so much. We'll now go to C, which is award a contract to Red Hawk Services, Inc. of Paris, California for the North Sphere wind fence installation in the amount of $311,696. Project number 767-22. Who will be providing us with that staff report?
I will. Brian Dealer from the Public Works Department. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. This contract is for the installation of wind fence at key locations in the north end of Palm Desert with the goal of reducing or eliminating sand from blowing onto the streets. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, are there any questions? I think, let me see if I can do this a little bit better, Mayor Pro Tem. Are there any public comments on this issue before we get into questions and discussions? And I am not surprised Mr. Stafford, who did write in his letter about this, would like to speak. So please, Mr. Stafford.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thanks again for letting me comment. This particular one is very dear to my heart. During the windy season this year, we had substantial sand that had accumulated in our lot as well as other neighbors here in Genesis, to the point that we've spent many days vacuuming our landscaping and actually hauling out almost a ton of sand because of these adjacent lots that don't have any wind control or any dust control mechanism. So when we met with Public Works Deputy Director Ramirez, myself and the president of the HOA here, we were very excited about what was proposed. And I really wholeheartedly wish the council will approve it, because we are being directly impacted by the amount of sand from these adjacent lots to us. They have not had adequate erosion control or any kind of a soil stabilizer installed on them. So as a consequence, when it gets around 25 miles an hour, we start getting the sand coming in, blowing over our walls and depositing into our pool and all of our landscaping areas. We literally couldn't use our pool for many weeks because of about 2 inches of mud that basically accumulated in it. So we highly encourage you to, and please approve this, because it's become such a burden to me that it's really disillusioned my whole thought of wanting to live in this part of town. So I just really hope that the installation of this fence will cut down the amount of sand so we can enjoy our properties. In addition to that, I guess there's a city ordinance. I know there's a lot of debate around lots that were in a construction mode versus those are just in kind of an open space kind of mode. It's my understanding that irrespective of that, there's a city ordinance, which I highlighted again in my comments to council, that actually would stipulate that some of these are considered nuisance lots. And as such, then, you know, these landowners need to be prepared to control the sand. Now, a short interim fix for that is, again, what's being proposed from the city. And I think it'd be an excellent opportunity, because when we see where these fences have been installed around Coachella Valley, you don't see the buildup of the sand that we saw in our particular lot. And I know that everyone knows the issues in Dinah Shore and the amount of sand that accumulated there. It became a real safety hazard for drivers as well as those on motorcycles. So I really highly encourage, and again, appreciate letting us be engaged in the process. It's very satisfying to know the city is listening to our comments. And again, please approve this. We need it badly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we appreciate your comments and that you are engaged. Thank you, Mr. Stafford. I see Mr. Nelson has his hand up. Remember, 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. I do want to echo Mr. Stafford's comments as it relates to the sand issue that we're suffering here, or suffered, I should say. But I do want to take the time to compliment the Public Works Department for rescuing us from that very, sad event. I think they will share with you that it took almost a week to dig out from the sand that came from directly and indirectly from 2 specific lots on our northern side. And, I'm sure that went to quite an expense for the city, although we do appreciate that. And we do appreciate the efforts made by Public Works and staff. But to echo those comments, we do, like Mike said, definitely encourage the approval of this sand fence. If enforcement cannot be made to have these landowners certainly place the proper, and I will say proper and underscore that, amount of soil stabilizer, initially, and then, following up that it's still at the required amount to stabilize the sand, then I think our only option is the sand fence, which is before you today. And I certainly ask that it be approved, because it will help us on Dinah Shore, our northern border, because it was a safety issue, certainly. And that road should have been closed, quite frankly, during that wind event and the wind events like it. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? And I see no one else in public with hand up. So Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Gaylor, I appreciated your brief presentation. I do have a few questions, but I'll make them brief as well. So there are here's the first question. There's different approaches to this problem. Did staff study the various alternatives and conclude that the one being proposed, the one before us, would be the most effective and cost-effective alternative?
Yes.
Okay, good. Number 2, how long is the fencing expected to last?
The fencing itself will last, it could last for decades. The chain link and the posts
When the fabric gets sun bleached or starts to deteriorate, we're estimating that it could be a period of 5 years before we start seeing wear and tear on some of that fabric.
That leads me to question 3. What is the expected maintenance cost? Have we projected that yet?
We haven't priced out the cost of the material over 5 years to see what that would come out.
Okay. Here's the penultimate question. How did we decide on these specific locations? And can we expect additional requests as these go up from other residents for additional locations in the future?
Yeah, we checked with our street maintenance department and had them go back through their logs and see where the highest concentration of sand in the streets occurred. They provided the list to us. It's possible that we could receive requests from other communities, but as it stands right now, we didn't observe major problems anywhere but these locations.
Thank you. Final question. So as I mentioned previously, in the past, the city has assessed private property owners under, I guess, the public nuisance ordinance, and required those private property owners to erect fencing on their own and at their own cost. We are now being asked, staff is recommending that we expend a significant amount of funds, which will come out of our reserve, to pay for this mitigation. Does this represent a shift in policy where we will no longer assess private property owners and require them to erect fencing, but instead do so ourselves as a city?
I hesitate to discuss policy. I don't know if I have the authority to discuss policy, but I think possibly the difference in this location is that the vast majority of the locations are land that has been undisturbed. There's not active grading on these sites. And so I think that's the difference in this situation.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Quintanilla, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, Mayor Pro Tem took a gazillion of my questions, so no, that's exactly what I had. How did we get there? Why were these chosen? What's the durability? So the question I would have then is, let's say that there's a new development and one of these regions is no longer impacted by sand. Would the city then take that material, because you're saying the posts and the fencing are very durable? Would those materials be shifted to another location that maybe could anticipate growing amounts of sand? And I do think a very important question was posed. At what time would we then decide to close the streets in the event of accumulations of sand or high winds, as we know this area is very prone to it? Personally, I grew up in Thousand Palms, and I know that it would cross the streets and the school bus couldn't even get out to Ramon. So I completely understand the way that impacts. So I would like to know, can they be recycled to other parts of the city? And is it possible to designate street closures or warnings in advance?
Yeah, I anticipate that those assets would remain in the city's property. We could either store them at the courtyard until a location came up where we could reuse them, or if there's a place that opens up immediately, we could transfer them like that.
Okay, Councilmember Kelly, please.
Move to approve the item.
I do have one question. I don't think it was addressed about the possibility of street closures. Is that something that is best addressed another time, or is it not part of this discussion?
I would defer to our transportation division. I'm sure they're better equipped to answer that. Andy, do you want to take that?
Yes, thanks, Ryan. In the event there are issues where there is need for street closures, our traffic team works in conjunction with our police department, and if needed, at times the fire department. And so those times come up as we do assessments throughout the day, and reports come in.
You see Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan's hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. I intentionally didn't get to the discussion point, but it sounds, since I heard a motion, it sounds like we're there. So let me express my concerns. Number one, we're using reserve funds and we're already into the millions of tapping into the reserve. So I'm concerned, some serious numbers. I mean, we've been very careful to accumulate our reserves and that paid off well during COVID. And so I'm concerned about using reserve funds for this purpose. Number two, I'm concerned about ongoing costs. I think there are some projection and expectation. Well, we don't really know whether others are going to come forward and say, well, we want fencing in our neighborhood because we're getting sand. And if that happens, we'll be hard pressed to say no. And then there's the ongoing maintenance and these things, we've seen them. They start off, standing up straight and then the wind blows and now they're all the way down to the street. So I think I'm not saying we shouldn't do this, but I'm saying we better be prepared for what's up ahead. The biggest concern I have, though, is policy. It would be egregiously unfair if we expended city funds to address the problem that's before us and then turned around at a later date and imposed a requirement on a private property owner to do the same out of their pocket. So I think before we move forward with this one way or another, we need to address that and either specify here today that this is a shift in policy, that any wind fencing will be at the cost of the city and not private property owner, or we should postpone this matter until we've addressed that as a policy matter.
Councilmember Kelly, please.
Well, I had not anticipated that this would be controversial because this council previously authorized the issuance of the request for bids. And we did so because failing to make these installations would be a classic case of being penny wise and pound foolish. Currently, our staff is dispatched to do street cleanup to a high degree because of wind conditions. And so taking this prophylactic step should save some staff time. But more importantly, we frequently talk about the appearance of our city, the importance of maintaining a certain standard in Palm Desert, and we can't do that if we're under sand dunes. So I see what's being proposed tonight as a standalone step to address urgent conditions, which we experienced in the past season, pose safety risks way beyond any aesthetic concerns. And as our city continues to develop, and we will have less and less uncovered space posing these issues. I don't see it as a problem that will multiply. So again, I'm surprised it's controversial. I think this is one of those things you just have to do, like putting out the trash and collecting the trash cans. We can't allow another season to occur in which a significant amount of staff time has to be taken cleaning sand off the street.
And I see other hands up, but I also see our city attorney. I'd like to hear from him before we go further with comments, please.
Thank you. As far as the underlying policy, the law is, and I think it's generally been the policy of the city, is if you have an undisturbed lot, you're not responsible for controlling sand. If you have a lot that you've gone out and graded, you are. And the city has been very proactive in enforcing blowing sand against lots that people have disturbed, right? But if it's undisturbed, it's kind of a natural condition, and you really can't record. But I don't want to make a definitive statement because at some point we might have to try. But generally speaking, you can't require people to mitigate natural conditions. So,
Okay, and I want to make a quick comment, if I may. Mr. Nelson, I see your hand is up. The time for public comment has passed, so we're in council conversation right now. And I'll move to Councilmember Quintanilla, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm wondering, just as Councilor Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan is asking, are we setting a new precedent and understanding what our city attorney is saying? Now, was that city policy or generally California's policy that an undisturbed lot can be left alone? Because if there's a way to say, hey, for all of these months, years, you have left this unattended, don't know what you want to do, but now it's become a public safety issue. And would the city be liable for not taking actions? I mean, I still have questions, but want to know, is there anything we can do to be proactive, to have public safety? And we don't know how long they could let those lots sit. This is a continual issue. Thank you.
And I see our city attorney wants to answer your question. And you're muted.
Generally, my understanding of state law is you can't require generally mitigation of natural conditions, and that's generally been the policy of the city. You know, I haven't specifically looked into if under extraordinary conditions you could have somebody go out and mitigate blowing sand. It's just like water, you know, if water runs off your property and your property is in natural conditions, it's the downriver person that has to deal with it. If you've modified your property and water is running off in a different kind of a way, then it's your problem. And I would also, you know, along that I-10 corridor, sand's been blowing forever. And the fact is, we have corridors out there where we protect the blowing sand because it's necessary for some of our natural preserves, you know, to maintain that blowing sand. So I'm not optimistic about our ability to require private property owners to mitigate derivatives of the natural condition.
Councilmember Nestandi, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, to start, I'll second the motion to approve. We asked staff to do a request for proposal, and they've come up with a solution. So I'm seconding the motion. And I just want to say, as a city as a whole, the last area is the North Sphere for home building, and we have a housing shortage. So the city has encouraged home development here. And so we do have a responsibility, I believe, to our neighbors that have homes in the North Sphere to make it a livable and safe area. Otherwise, as a city, are we saying we don't want to build any more homes over here and just have buyer beware to buy? So I think the city's on the right path. We need to do what we can to mitigate Mother Nature's wind and the sand. That we do live in a desert and there is sand. So I think we as a city need to do what's right here. And I believe that is to approve staff's request here as a needed approval.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate everybody's perspective on this. Let me say that at $342,000, this is probably the most expensive prophylactic I've ever heard of. And there'll likely be additional costs. I don't think anyone is arguing about the fact that there's a problem out there. The reason we went out to RFP is so that we can make a thoughtful decision. We didn't vote at the last meeting that we should do this. We didn't know what it would cost. We wanted more information. Now we have that information and enables us to make a more educated and a better decision. That's why the process works the way it does. If we can come to the conclusion that this is the best way to solve the problem, because there are other alternatives, but if we can come to the conclusion that this is the best way to approach it and that the cost is worth it, it still leaves open the question of policy. And that's very troublesome. Mr. Hargreaves, I can attest to you under oath if necessary that I'm directly aware of a lot that was not graded and was required by the city to install fencing at the owner's cost. that's a problem. I think the very discussion that's taking place tonight indicates very clearly that A, we don't really know what our policy is. There's been inconsistency on how that response to sand has been applied. And now we're suggesting that the city pay to install fencing on private property to solve a problem. And it would be hard pressed to then turn around and assess private property owners to do that at their cost. I think if nothing else tonight, we've learned that we need to clarify the policy. And if we're setting a precedent, let's understand that and be okay with it. But I'm going to suggest again that we either clarify the policy here tonight as part of this item, or that we defer the item until we incorporate policy, an understanding of policy, and a definition of policy moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, I see no other hands up, so I'm gonna go out on a limb here and make a couple comments. No, I am not. Council member.
By all means, or if you wanted to have the closing. Okay.
all you.
I'm wondering if it would be possible or wise to advance this and start moving forward. I mean, we're not going to get everything done in a snap. So would there be any benefit to advance it and start working out the logistics in the meantime that Mr. Hargraves has a chance to find if there's any possible way to offset this? If Mayor Pro Tem says that he's got historic knowledge, then that's very valuable. And then we would know, can we start the project and then send them the bill and say, you've left this unattended for too long. You have now become a public safety nuisance. Instead of just a nuisance lot, you are now a public safety nuisance. Can we send that bill to them? Because we need to take care of our residents first and foremost. Can we send them the bill, Bob?
Okay.
No, you'd have to give them notice ahead of time and give them the opportunity to fix the problem before you could spend money and then requiring them to pay. So it would be, you know, probably a rather difficult and long process.
Or can we start it in sections if we know right now the part that is pushed up against the Genesis development, for example, that's been the largest safety concern. Can we do it in stages and then have time to notify and have them respond? I agree that, you know, we want to be conservative with our funds, but we can't do that at the cost of people's quality of life. I think that there could be another way, but I don't think we can wait. So maybe for future ideas, but I think if we maybe put it in stages, but we can't double down on public safety.
Okay, so I do have some comments to make. We have a bigger issue with wind. We have had a drought, and I asked this question at Coachella Valley Association of Governments because the blow sand has been so much more than it has been in the past. In all my 45 so years of living in this desert, I have never seen it this bad. And the reason it's so bad is because it's a drought. And so there isn't that shell that sometimes forms on the sand that prevents it from blowing. And there's less vegetation additionally that prevents sand from blowing. And we've had worse winds because of our extreme weather. And one of our policies as a city is safety. And we can't leave that on the street just because somebody doesn't want to clean up or they don't want to put a fence up. Sometimes we're going to have to do that. Things have changed, and things have changed with our weather, and we have to respond to it because that's who we are as a city. And we have to understand once that sand also is on the street, and we have long had street sweeper contracts. We have seen people out there with shovels cleaning it up. We do what we can to mitigate the issue, but it's worse than ever. And perhaps in the future, we are going to be closing streets during these extreme events. And we'll have to leave that to public safety. But in the meantime, we can't sit back and say, we don't want to spend the money. We may have to, as we go through budgeting, start looking at an amount of money, and we're going to have a line item for these types of measures. So we've got to look at this and make sure we're taking care of our community members, that we are making sure that people are safe on the street. When you look at it, $250,000 is nothing if somebody instead got hurt because we didn't fence something off. So this is not easy. We are conservative. We are very prudent with our funds, but we're also very strong supporters of safety and quality of living in our community. So I see no other way but to go forward and of course, put those fences up. And let's start planning for them. And let's look around now for what we might be confronted with in our upcoming season, because this isn't going to stop. And I think we all know that. So let's pay attention to that and prepare. A little prevention goes a long way. And I see Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan's hand is up.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Very quickly, and I can count, so very briefly. First of all, nobody's arguing with that, including myself. That's not what the discussion is about, at least in my mind. It's about whether we're taking the appropriate step to solve the problem. It is necessary and urgent to solve the problem. The question is this the right way to do it? And it brings up a very important policy issue, which can come back to bite the city. So my suggestion, in the interest of being open-minded and constructive, would the motion maker consider adding to her motion a request for staff to analyze the policy aspect of this item moving forward and come back with a report to council?
So long as that does not delay implementation.
And that's what I meant. Just to add that, as a final item.
Yes, that's acceptable.
Okay.
And
Well,
does
if
the
you can move,
second-
then I can move. So that's fine.
Good. And did the seconder also agree with that?
I will agree, yes.
Thank you. Now, is there any further discussion? Let's have roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi,
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla,
Aye.
Mayor Harnick,
Yes.
motion passes 5-0.
And a win.
Mayor, on that happy outcome, could we take a 10-minute break to celebrate?
Absolutely. 10 minutes. So it is 5:30. We'll be back at 5:40. Okay, it is 5:40. And it looks like we have everybody back, do we? Mostly? Okay. We are now under 2, the action calendar. We're all now on D, consideration of a resolution to implement the classification and compensation study, approve a memorandum of understanding, MOU, with the Palm Desert Employees Organization, PDEO, for a cost of living adjustment of 3% or lump sum payment of up to $3,500 and approve a cost of living adjustment of 3% or a lump sum payment up to $3,500 for confidential employee group. And I would imagine Ms. Staley will be giving us our report.
I will. Good evening, Madam Mayor and honorable council members. I believe I now have the record for the longest title on a staff report. So my name is Andrea Staley, and I am the Human Resources Manager here at the lovely city of Palm Desert. So today's staff is requesting, adoption of a resolution authorizing classification positions, the salary schedule and ranges based on a recent classification and compensation study, approving an MOU between the Palm Desert Employees Organization, approving similar compensation for our confidential employees, and authorizing the city manager to take action. So I wanted to note that before I start my presentation that there is a typo in the salary schedule, which will be corrected in the final resolution. So wanted to note that. So though the staff report has the details, I want to take a few minutes to provide a summary of the information. So this should be quick and brief. So a classification and compensation study process. We have been going through our class and comp process since fall of 2021. We hired CPS HR to conduct the study itself. We had extensive employee participation, which included interviews and questionnaires and doing a market buddy analysis. We also created a task force in order to get the employee participation. As I mentioned, we reviewed all positions and salaries. And then after the class and comp study process, the city manager directed staff to ensure ranges are set at the top of the market. And that was in order to recruit and retain employees. So the market results, what happened is that the position ranges are now set or being proposed to be set at the top of the market. 37 positions will receive an increase, 30 positions will remain the same, and 22 employees will be Y rated, which means that they were over the market and they won't receive any salary increases until the positions are within market. We have a wonderful employee organization, and they requested to meet and confer over the class and comp study. And the city team and PDO team met on August 8th and 10th, and on August 10th, we reached a tentative agreement, which included the implementation of the class and comp study, a 3% COLA for employees that are within market. So those are the employees that will receive range increases as well as that are at market, and up to a $3,500 lump sum for the Y-rated employees. So the recommendation today, as was mentioned, was adopting the resolution, which has the new classification system, approving an MOU that has an implementation of the study, and a COLA or lump sum, depending if they are in market or out of market. We also have a confidential group that we're requesting the same compensation package, and then authorizing the city manager to take all necessary actions to implement. So I just wanted to also remind the council that during the July meeting, it was approved for the supervisor group for the implementation of the class and comp study, and a 3% COLA or a one-time payment, depending if the positions were in market or outside of market. So with that, I thank you for your time and consideration, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? I see none. Are there any public comments on this item? And I see none there. So we'll go to discussion. Is there any discussion? Well, how about a motion? Yes, Councilmember Quintanilla.
No comment or no question other than we have amazing staff and we're a great city because of the staff. So it's easy to move forward and advance something that makes our employees have a better quality of life, not just the cost of living increase. So it's great to walk around and see smiling employees, and that in itself is rewarding. So, and with that, I move.
I will second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? I just want to thank the team the entire team that has gone through this process. I know it's been a lot of work and a lot of navigating, and it looks like everyone got to a good place. So thank you so much. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi.
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla.
Aye.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. We'll go to E now. Adopt County of Riverside Traffic Impact Analysis Guidelines for Level of Service and Vehicle Miles Traveled, and Coachella Valley Association of Governments Active Transportation Design Guidelines. I see Mr. Bowman on my screen.
Good evening, Mayor, Honorable Mayor, members of City Council. You have before you two resolutions this afternoon to adopt two documents that will aid the city to react to development proposals in the Riverside Traffic Impact Analysis Guidelines, as well as to encourage more active transportation elements, best practices to be incorporated in land development activity, as well as capital improvement project and maintenance activity. Here to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? I see none. Are there any public comments on this issue? And again, I see none, so we'll go to discussion or a motion.
I will move to approve with gratitude for bringing this item forward.
Thank you. Is there a
Well,
second?
I will second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
That's okay. I got you. Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla.
Aye.
Councilmember Nastandi.
Yes.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you so much. Okay, now letter F, adopt a resolution declaring 73-420 Dinah Shore Drive, Palm Desert exempt surplus land for purposes of the Surplus Land Act. And it looks like Ms. Glickman.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I am Deborah Glickman, Management Analyst in the Economic Development Department. What you have before you is a resolution requesting that the property on Dinah Shore be, I'm going to share my screen in just a moment, be declared exempt surplus for the sake of the Surplus Land Act. Here's a little bit of overview. Being exempt surplus means that upon approval by the state HCD department, that the city is able to exchange the property for another property that is going to be used for city use for public good. Oops, sorry. Let me start the slideshow. Once approved by the City Council, the resolution goes to the HCD for review. They have 30 days to respond to the submission and approve it. After approval from HCD, the city may exchange the property. The property is being looked at to be exchanged for another property right nearby, owned by Monterey 2.0. And this new property that the city would acquire would be for open space. Both properties are zoned Plan Commercial 3, and I'll show you a map. The blue property that you see is the one owned by Monterey 2.0. The red is owned by the city of Palm Desert. Here's a close-up of both of the parcels. Once the exempt status is approved, then the city is able to exchange the properties. Staff will return to the city council for an approval of all property exchange documents and anything else related to the exchange. Right now, what council is looking at is just the declaration of the land as surplus property. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? And I see Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Yeah, I have a question. Ms. Glickman, can you put that slide back up that showed the two properties?
Sure, let me. Here we go.
Thank you.
Yes.
So the one in the blue is owned by Monterey Crossing and was valued at just under $8 a square foot. The one that the city owns is the one in red and was valued at $4.39 a square foot. I'm having a hard time understanding how the property in blue, which doesn't even have access off of Monterey, off of Dinah Shore and so forth, is essentially under a freeway interchange or overpass thing, can be valued more, not quite twice as much, but a lot more than property that has significant footage right on Dinah Shore with potential direct access, signage, and so forth. Can you comment on that?
I can tell you that the numbers that were derived in the staff report came from appraisals of both properties that were executed in March of 2022. So the appraiser compared with what they saw to be comparable properties to determine those values. This is all part of what would come back to the city council, that the sale wouldn't go, this is not allowing the sale to go through. This is just declaring the property exempt surplus, so those conversations can be started.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Any public? Oh, yes, Mayor Pro Tem. And you're.
I heard comments. So are we going back to comments before public or?
Public. Oh yeah, we are. I was just going to move to public comments. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment? And I see none. So let's go back to the council. Is there anyone who would like to comment or discuss? And I see Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Yeah, so I'm not confident that the appraisal for the city-owned property on Dinah Shore is accurate. And the reason is that I'm aware of comparable sales on Dinah Shore that have gone for much, much, much more than that. One recent sale came out to $23 a square foot. And there were other sales that were below that, but close to it. So I understand staff's answer to my question that this simply kind of moves forward the designation of surplus land. But I wonder if we can, in addition, ask staff to re-examine the valuation, maybe get a second certified appraisal, just to give us a sense of assurance that we're not being undersold, if you will. And I would be happy to move forward with the motion with that inclusion at the appropriate time.
Okay, Councilmember Kelly, please.
Yes, I was just about to suggest that moving forward to satisfy the Surplus Land Act would seem appropriate while satisfying any concerns about the appraisal. And when it comes back, Mayor Pro Tem, I promise not to say you already decided. In this case, there's plenty of time to bring forth additional facts on these questions.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I will move with the condition that there be a second appraiser. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Nasandi,
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla,
Aye.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you so very much. Okay, we will now move to G, which is adopt a resolution to approve an environmental initiatives plan. And I see Ms. Lawrence and Ms. Stahl here.
Yes, good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Amy Lawrence, Special Programs Manager, and in response to one of City Council's 2022 goals, staff was tasked with developing a new environmental initiatives plan and strategy to replace the outdated sustainability plan that was adopted in 2010. During a study session held last month, staff presented the City Council with a proposed environmental initiatives plan model to include a project tracker and implementation and reporting schedule. The plan tracker was created by taking inventory of the city's current sustainability related projects and proposing additional projects modeled after what other cities are doing to be more environmentally sustainable. And the request before you today is to adopt the environmental initiatives plan via resolution so that staff can begin formally tracking progress on current and upcoming projects, monitor utility and greenhouse gas metrics, and report status of the plan to council on a quarterly and annual basis. And with that, Tricia Stoll and I are available for questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? And I see Councilmember Quintanilla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, in looking at what we're doing internally as a city, which is absolutely amazing. I love the detail. I love who's responsible. I love the timeline. That is an excellent document to have. My question is, do we have any incentives for our developers that are coming to Palm Desert to say, here's our ultimate goal. We would like you to do X, Y, Z in order to help us reach our goals?
I actually am not sure about that, but we can certainly look into it. I can work with Eric Seha on that and get back to you.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes, in that vein, I want to ask a question I hope I know the answer to, but it may be helpful just for clarity. This is an effort at a very comprehensive plan. A lot's got into it. And as you shared, we spent time looking at it at a study session. Would I be correct in assuming, however, that as comprehensive as we have tried to be, staff and the council will continue to be free to add initiatives that seek to address environmental concerns? We don't have to try to be exhaustive tonight in discussing everything that might potentially be done, because we have the prerogative to add initiatives. Is that a correct assumption?
It is a correct assumption. Yes, it's a living document. We do foresee adding programs and projects as we move it forward over the next 1.5 or 2 years.
Great.
Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Jonathan, please.
Thank you. That raised a question in my mind. Ms. Lawrence, I mean, you're saying that this document is kind of a start, but is it safe to assume that probably the most important aspects of the environment and when the highest priorities for what the city can and should do to do our part to protect Mother Earth are incorporated into this document at this point?
I believe right now the information included in the plan are items that we're currently working on, and there's some proposed items as well and other things that can be brought forward and included in the plan ultimately. I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding your question.
I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of assurance that if this document is just a start, are we at least addressing the most important issues that have the highest priority and give the city the ability to do everything it can based on that. We talked about urgent matters, sand on streets and so forth. So are we addressing the most urgent, the most significant issues in this plan that is serving, I guess, as a starting point?
I'll comment that the categories that we used were based off of sustainability plans of some of the most sustainable cities that I was able to research. So I believe we're touching on some of those high priority issues that include water and waste and energy. But we did have in the plan to do a best practice review about 12 months in to make sure that we weren't missing any of those key items that we should be taking into consideration. And then after the 3 years, decide if we should go with a full RFP for a complete plan from an outside source.
Was the city of Palm Springs included in your analysis?
I did research projects that the city of Palm Springs was doing as well.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who has a question? Okay, are there any public comments? And I see none, and I do want to mention that this was brought in front of the Resource Preservation and Enhancement Committee, and they absolutely embraced all the work that was done and all the opportunities to do a better job of protecting the earth and the environment. Okay, are there any questions? I mean, any comments? And I see Councilmember Quintanilla, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Like I said, I love the way that this is all going. When we were asked for our priorities, I submitted this and said I wanted Palm Desert to be the green vanguard. And with that in mind of going above and beyond, I know that I have beat the drum of hempcrete before. And the question that I'd ask, maybe it's not as feasible right now with the city and with what we have under construction, but I would like to see something where we can incentivize developers. Not only is it affordable, it's seismically sustainable, it's carbon sequestering, and it has a lot of durability that is beneficial in the desert, because we know that concrete is not recyclable. It doesn't have the longevity. And I did ask a developer and he said, well, that's not in your code. So I asked Eric and he said, there's nothing in the code now that prevents it. So I think that we need to look at additional materials that are available and see if we can incentivize our developers. We have bioplastics that are available, and some of those can withstand 450 degrees Celsius. This would help our city maintain costs, would help our residents maintain their costs lower. So, I mean, I'm thinking above and beyond. I know it may not happen right now, but the conversations need to get rolling. We've got global warming that's right down our throats, and we need to move faster. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And I concur with my colleague, Councilmember Quintanilla, and I want to commend staff for moving this forward. Protecting the environment has been a long-term goal for the city of Palm Desert, and I think this is a great start, with one exception. I think there's a big hole here, and it's no reflection on staff, because I know you're trying to reflect council priorities and reflect policy and so forth, but I think we need to look at something. There's a whereas in the resolution, and it says, whereas the greenhouse gases released into the atmosphere have been found to have a profound effect on the Earth's climate, and reducing the potential magnitude of climate change may lower its harmful effects on public health and safety. By far, the biggest impact that our city can have on the environment is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And that means opting into Desert Community Energy, DCE, of which our city is a board member. And we don't have to speculate about that, because the city of Palm Springs has already done that. And it has been super impactful in the city of Palm Springs. After 1 year, Palm Springs reported the following results. They reduced their greenhouse gas emissions to 16, and this is in 2020, to 16% below the 2010 levels. They didn't reduce it compared to the prior year. They reduced it compared to over a decade's worth of growth. That reduction represented 115,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. And if you want to make it real, that's equivalent to taking 25,000 gas guzzling cars off of our roads. What more can the city do than that? And how can we possibly have an environmental protection plan that omits that opportunity for our residents? Our city can and must do the same thing that Palm Springs chose to do, and that is opt into DCE. I mean, why wouldn't we? And I see a couple hands up, and I'm sure that I'll hear their responses to that question. And I'll be very interested to see how we can justify not giving our residents an opportunity to protect the environment. I believe that an environmental initiatives plan that does not include opting into DCE is an impotent plan that guarantees failure. Even though we've set these lofty goals, I think it guarantees failure. We talk a lot about leading the way when it comes to the environment. I don't think we're leading the way here. I think we've lost our way. And today is our opportunity to rectify that. SCE, Southern California Edison, announced recently that their 50% and 100% green rates, that's a similar plan to what DCE has, are suspended for all new customers. DCE is now our only option. If our residents want to impact the environment in a positive way by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, they don't have that opportunity with Southern California Edison. They have it with DCE, and they don't have to do it. It's not mandatory. We'd be giving our residents an opportunity, a choice to do so. Let's become the environmental leader we once were and opt into DCE. It's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Councilmember Kelly, please.
I want the public to know first and foremost that having a comprehensive program of this type, taking initiatives on every possible front, was a key goal for the entire council in our goal setting process. And I'm so appreciative of staff for the way you have moved this forward, claiming initiative again on the landscaping front, on the water use front, returning to a project which had largely been abandoned, of maximizing use of solar on all city-owned facilities, returning to a program which had been abandoned, of minimizing emissions for our own fleet of vehicles. Thank you. The topic of DCE has been discussed extensively by this council. It's complex. I'm not going to get into the merits this evening because it has been discussed extensively by this council, and we don't have everything before us this evening that would warrant a reconsideration of that question if the process made it appropriate. So perhaps that's for another day. I do want to acknowledge, Mayor Pro Tem, that after this council, following detailed discussion, decided not to launch DCE for our residents. You did ask staff to assess the possibility of city accounts being moved to DCE. That consideration was put to the side during the pandemic because of the expectation of strained budgets. So when we return to the next budget cycle, it might become appropriate to resurface that issue. But tonight is not the correct time to resurface the DCE issue, having fully discussed it within this council. Tonight is the time to celebrate a very, very positive, comprehensive plan that staff has brought before us.
Thank you. Councilmember Nastandi, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I echo Council Member Kelly's comments that we have vetted DCE on several agenda meetings and have spent several hours on it. And we've decided not to move forward. I'm not going to repeat it because you've already said it, Council Member Kelly. And in terms of, solar panels, that's also another discussion, I believe, and even maybe for our resource committee to discuss. Just real quick, I just want to throw out there, solar panels require minerals, and currently the state of California has a ban on us mining for minerals. So we're getting a lot of it from China. So I think if it's important to Councilmember Jonathan and all of us about going green, we need to have a study session or another time to discuss policy at the state level and what we can do as cities and regional like CVAG to help promote going green. And the easiest thing to do is to plant as many trees as possible because they will help with carbon emissions. So trees is the easiest thing to do at this point in time.
Thank you. And you know that CVAG has developed a region-wide plant palette that will be a tremendous assist in that effort. Councilmember Quintanilla, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I do recall at a recent meeting that Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan brought up and said that we should look into DCE, and I did say that I would be interested in that. So I'm not sure if that follow-up is included in this and was excluded by staff, or if this is going to be pushed to a later date. And I understand that previous councils have discussed this, but we have new people on council, we have new residents. In that time, we have also learned that the state of California has not only said, okay, great, be solar, but it's not recyclable. Solar panels are not recyclable. They will require new materials to reconstruct. And as said, we have to be very cautious with what we are mining and appending. So I think that DCE should be explored. Now that we've seen how Palm Springs did and didn't, it was a controversy, it was a mess. But as the education rolled out, that's what we can learn from. And again, we can't stay and say we're going to go green all the way if we're not exploring other options. And I think that it warrants discussion again. In the time that this has happened, how much more have we seen in climate change? I think between then we've seen the 2 degrees Celsius change, how that's impacted global water, how it's impacted rising tides and affecting corals and plankton, all of these things that are causing ecological disasters that we feel may not impact us, but they truly do. So I truly do believe that it warrants another discussion, a study session, and not just bouncing it to RPEC. This is a decision that we will be making, so I think it needs to be a study session. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Stahl, please.
Based on Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan's feedback at the study session, we did add to the proposed projects municipal accounts for DCE, and staff have already begun to start looking into what that would look like. So we'll be able to get some information and bring it back to council, or if you guys prefer a study session, something like that, to share the information that we come up with together.
We look forward to that. Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to thank my colleagues. I understand your perspective. I appreciate it. And I think we all share the goal of making our city placed in the forefront of protecting the environment. Our disagreement is perhaps about how to get there and priorities. I would just grieve at a lost opportunity to take 25,000 cars off the street. If the time, we're addressing an environmental initiative plan. I mean, are you kidding? This isn't the right time to look at DCE, the most profound impact that we can do on protecting our environment. This is the time to do that. Absolutely the time. And if we've looked at this in the past, who cares? Our knowledge, our understanding, and the earth itself is evolving. When the term climate change first came up, I said, we don't have science on that. The earth warms, it cools. It could be part of the normal cycle. I don't feel that way anymore. I think we're destroying our planet And because we are part of that destruction, we have an opportunity to be part of the healing, part of the solution. So for this council, for this city to adopt an environmental initiatives plan that doesn't undertake the single most impactful step that we have at our hands and our ability to take to protect the environment, to me is irresponsible. And that's why I would grieve at this lost opportunity. If it's the council's wish to move this forward, I very much agree with Councilmember Quintanilla, and I would ask that as part of the motion tonight, that we schedule another study session to get updated information about DCE, about options that are available, about the impacts on our residents, and most importantly, historical data that we now have at our hands that we didn't previously. Thank you.
Councilmember Nastandi, please.
Yeah, I am all for protecting our environment. I want clean air. I want clean water. I want all of that. And it's the methods of how we achieve that goal, Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan. And the whole Go Green movement has so many parts, unknown consequences. You know, where does DCE get its energy from? You know, is it truly green? Is it really not? Are we just getting our energy from China? It's really a bigger discussion that I welcome to have. But I want to get, if we have a study session, I want to look at all these factors.
Thank you, Councilmember Quintanilla.
I agree with Councilmember Nastandi that we all are working to these objectives, but we cannot afford to push it forward. When I was a kid in school, we were told recycle and all of these plastics, and now we're learning that not all plastics are created equal, that little specific number inside the recycle symbol, not every region was equipped to recycle them. We are seeing the consequences of these landfills. That's why we have the Landfill Reduction Act. This is now what is coming from the state of California that said, all right, everybody, we haven't been doing such a great job at it. So as we look at these changes may have unintended consequences, we are suffering from wondering what these unintended consequences are.
Councilmember Kelly.
Well, we agree on so much, almost everything. We agree that climate change is a real problem. We agree that protection of the environment should be a top priority, if not the top priority. And we agree that steps can have unintended consequences. The only thing we disagree upon is whether DCE might be one of those steps that has unintended consequences. Those of us who voted against it last time believed it could have unintended consequences. So we know that we're all in favor of what staff has brought before us. We know that 2 council members have requested a reconsideration of the DCE issue, and that's sufficient to make that happen. Our city manager has been listening. So I move approval of the item.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I just want to get some clarification. I would support that motion if my understanding is correct, that there is concurrent with that a commitment to have a study session to re-examine the city opting into desert community energy and to answer the very good questions brought up by my colleague, Councilmember Nastandi, as well as other questions that have come up tonight. So is my understanding correct that part of the action taken tonight, if the motion is approved, would be a commitment to hold a study session regarding DCE?
Well, I think I heard that's what Councilmember Kelly just said, that there were 2 council people who agreed on that, and that's what it takes to move something forward. So that's what I heard.
We heard the same thing. I just want clarification. And maybe that's coming from the city manager. Are we committed then to having a study session regarding DCE if this motion moves forward?
What I'm hearing is that, yes, you are.
Thank you.
All right.
Then I would second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and that was to adopt a resolution to approve an environmental initiatives plan. So can we have roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Nistandi,
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla,
Aye.
Mayor Harning.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will, thank you. And thank you for all of the work you put in to get that in front of us. That was a tremendous effort and we appreciate it. Okay, approve the purchase of one electric mini street sweeper and one forklift for the total amount of $329,854.24. That looks like Mr. Ramirez might be sharing that with us.
Honorable Mayor and members of the council, Andy Ramirez, Deputy Director of Public Works. I believe we have Bertha Gonzalez, our Management Analyst, who I'm pleased to ask to present this, and we will both answer any questions you might have. Bertha.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Bertha Gonzalez. I am the Management Analyst for the Public Works Department. The purpose of the staff report is to request approval for the purchase of one electric mini street sweeper in the amount of $239,584 and one forklift in the amount of $90,270.24, a total of $329,854.24. Both units will be used by our street maintenance division. Our staff is available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? I see none. Are there any public comments? And I see none. Okay, can we have either a motion or, well, I don't know, some discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a proof that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, pardon the pun. I've complained enough to Mr. Bowman and others that we should do this, and thank you. I'd be happy to move approval.
And Councilmember Quintanilla, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My comment is that it is easy to approve something that benefits our staff, makes it easier. As I think somewhere I saw the quote that said that this expense will enhance, it will save us money instead of costing us money. So I appreciate that perspective, and these investments are always wise. So I second.
Great. Okay, thank you. And just imagine what, if that's 329,000 that helps our staff, and we have 311,000 that are going to help the people who live in the university area with sand. So that's a wonderful thing, and a good comparison. Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Nistandi.
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla.
Aye.
Mayor Harning.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you so much. Okay, consideration of options and provide staff direction on the establishment of an absentee landlord property registration program.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, Richard Canoni, Deputy Director of Development Services. If you'll bear with me 1 second while I pull up a presentation. There we go. So I have a few slides here I'd like to just briefly run through. This item was prepared in response to Councilmember Kelly had asked staff to research how other cities are handling single-family properties that are owned and rented primarily by absentee landlords, with a focus more on those that are corporate-owned, and a concern from some of the residents that had reached out to her regarding their inability or concern to contact them in case there was an issue, whether it be parking, trash cans, fence or wall falling down. And so what we did is we reached out to legal to talk to them about any sort of restrictions or concerns that they may have with such program as we were conducting the research. And they did have some concerns sharing private information, particularly with claims being filed under the California Constitution, and thought it would be extremely difficult to enforce. They also did premise, though, that a voluntary program, if someone was willing to do it, certainly could be done. So with that, we started to research a number of resort type communities that had both seasonal residents as well as rentals owned by corporations. And there were very few programs that we could find. So we kind of expanded our search even outwards throughout the state of California, as well as the United States, and really kind of classified these into two types of programs, sort of this absentee landlord registration program, which was outlined in Table 1, and then Table 2, which included sort of unoccupied vacant property registration programs. The absentee, as I mentioned, very few. We came really kind of across two that had standalone programs. There were a number that were related to rent control ordinances that some cities have had. But the vast majority of those absentee landlord registrations were tied to an annual housing inspection that was done. A lot of those were more in some of the older communities where homes were lacking minimum housing standards. So we've kind of casted our net a little wider and then looked at unoccupied and vacant property registration programs. And there were sort of three subcategories of those. The first being foreclosed or abandoned properties. Many of you may recall the ordinance that was adopted in 2008, 2009. I think it's 1185 is the ordinance that the city of Palm Desert adopted, but just about every city in the United States has a similar ordinance to deal with the mortgage crisis that occurred around that time in dealing with REO and abandoned properties. The other two programs that we looked at, both were the two communities, San Marino and Arcadia in Los Angeles County. One had to deal with a large number of second homeowners that primarily lived outside of the United States, and a concern that the police department had, as well as their city council, with burglary, squatters, and the like, and just having someone local, a property management company to contact. They have very few gated and HOA communities, and so this was an approach that they took to mitigate any potential issues related to that. The other had to do with vacant properties, more maintenance related. That was the Arcadia example that's included. And when I talked to the staff there, a lot of that had to deal with properties that were sitting vacant for a long time that weren't necessarily being maintained, but the same concern with homeless or vagrants illegally accessing those units, or criminal activity, homes being stripped of copper and the like. So there were a number of concerns that they had. And so I won't go into depth on each of these tables, but just quickly touch base. Obviously, we have the one from Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and San Antonio. These were the two standalone. The program in Rhode Island, as you see, they have a larger number, I should say, of rental properties as opposed to owner-occupied units. Again, this was implemented in 1991, and theirs was primarily dealing with a lot of out-of-state residents. They have a number of stacked homes. If you've ever been to kind of New England, you'll see a lot of the triplexes and duplexes. They aren't necessarily side to side, but they're stacked one on top of each other. And we're having issues with maintenance, code compliance, and reaching out and finding who those owners were. And then San Antonio adopted one in 2014, primarily in some of their poor neighborhoods that they were having issues with maintenance and finding who those landlords were, particularly if they lived outside of Bexar County, which is the county in which San Antonio is located. I was not able to talk to staff in Rhode Island. I was able to talk to some of the staff in San Antonio, and they hit it pretty hard when this first went into play. but it really hasn't been an issue. I think they, at one point, when it first started within the first 2 years, I think the compliance rate was around that they still had not had compliance was around 1,100 homes. And just to kind of put that in context, I think they have, I think it was around 300 single family homes. So it's very, very small amount. But again, very, very large city with a extremely large code compliance department that really focuses on kind of neighborhood services. So they have, again, a very big staff that focuses on a number of neighborhood related issues. The other 3 communities, of course, Palm Springs, San Marino, and Arcadia. I kind of touched on San Marino, Arcadia. Palm Springs updated their ordinance in 2020. Their ordinance actually grew out of a longstanding property maintenance and vacant building ordinance that they had. It also was, I believe, amended in 2008, 2009, around that time. But theirs is much more comprehensive in dealing with vacant boarded up properties and just how those are maintained. It includes both residential and commercial. You see they have a $2,100 or $2,200 roundup security monitoring fee where code compliance goes by weekly and keeps logs of the vacant properties. So there's a lot to that program.
Can I interrupt you for just 1 second? You're sharing the screen and they're side by side. If you can just show the one, we'll be able to see it a little bit better. And I imagine that anybody watching from a live stream may be able to get greater detail. Does that make sense? Or is anybody able to see the 2 side by side? Thank you. Much appreciated.
Sorry about that. Are you just seeing the one?
Yes. Yeah, right now it's just the main presentation. And even if it's not full screen in presentation mode, at least this gives us better clarity than the 2 side by side.
We're trying to fix that.
Absolutely.
It's not cooperating.
Well, if it doesn't work, then we move forward. I just wanted to be mindful of those that may have difficulty in reading the fine print. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Okay. Are you able? Is it showing? Are we?
Yeah, I think we just have 1 slide left. So
correct. Correct.
Move on.
And so again, this just gives you kind of the number of registrations and complaints that they've had. Again, Arcadia, it changes quite often. San Marino, they have no violations, currently 3 homes registered, and it fluctuates quite frequently.
You do need to move forward because right now it's on the 2nd slide.
Oh my goodness. It's not allowing me to open.
Now it's on the last one.
I will go to the last one. All right. So the last slide under the discussion item. There were 3 options that we had laid out. First being create are we able to see it now? Create a mandatory or voluntary absentee landlord program for single family or duplex, similar to what we have in table 1. Option B would be sort of to build on that and include sort of an unoccupied residence program. And then the third option would be to not create a mandatory or voluntary, essentially keep it as status quo. And we have included some considerations along with those options. For staff's recommendation, it would be option C, It has not been an issue. We understand where Councilmember Kelly was responding, but we have not seen a large number of issues that have come to code enforcement related to this. But certainly, if there was a desire to do it, a variant of option A could be implemented with our current staffing levels. With that, I will stop sharing.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councilmember Kelly?
Well, I very innocently started off with the perception that it would be easy to ask absentee landowners to give their contact information to immediately adjacent neighbors. How innocent I was. So, do I understand correctly that the city attorney has rained on my parade and informed us that that's simply not possible given privacy rules?
The simple answer would be yes. We probably cannot compel private property owners to disclose their contact information to their neighbors.
Okay, thank you. I guess perhaps I should have started by asking you.
Okay, I guess Councilmember Quintanilla, please.
In the presentation, the discussion was about corporate landlords. Are these individuals that are already working with an HOA, or individuals that it's a company that owns the property and are not using an property management company?
It was my understanding we were looking at outside homes at single family homes that were not within an HOA. Whether or not there's a management, I think if there was a property management company, it would behoove them to at least let those neighbors know. But we weren't able to drill down and even find out how many corporate owned properties. We're starting to try to build those layers now as part of our GIS mapping. But we were not able to give you a count of how many corporate owned single family homes that are in non-gated communities. Roughly, we've got about 7,000, again, rough numbers, about 7,000 single family detached that are not within gated communities.
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I find that when seeking a solution, it's often best to start by understanding the problem. So let's address that. As to your last comment, 7,000, I think we have 24,000 households. You mentioned 7,000 that are single family residences, not in gated community. What's the magnitude of the problem? We had a lot of complaints from people that are dealing with absentee ownership. Do we even have a problem?
I think from staff's perspective, there's two answers to that. The first one is we were asked a question and to look into what we could and could not do. So that is what the report shows you tonight. I think secondly, there are issues that come up on occasion. Pedro and his staff do an excellent job of trying to track folks down in those occasions and put them in touch with neighbors if that happens. So I don't know that we can make the argument that it's a rampant problem in the city, but we were trying to at least bring the council up to speed on what we've learned, what the prohibitions were. And I think that what we're doing right now is working fine. Could it be better? Yes, but I think you cross that bridge and not being able to mandate this service.
I've just been told, is my mic fuzzy?
Yes.
It is,
Yes, it is, Mayor.
why don't we just live with it for the rest of this item? First, are we in discussion, Mayor? You can just nod. Is discussion appropriate? I want to deeply thank staff for the extensive amount of research done here. I wasn't anticipating that the request would necessarily require this degree of research, and you've been immensely thorough, and I hope it will all be information that can be retained and useful depending upon what problems arise in the future. I'm certainly convinced that option C is the correct outcome now. I had a couple of residents raise concerns with me about this. I'm confident that code can heed whether it becomes a growing problem that requires some response. But each of the regulatory frameworks that were shared with us tonight are really geared toward issues of searching for words here, issues of property not being appropriately maintained. And if it's staff's determination that we don't need to ramp up our tools in that vein now, I certainly have no quarrel with that. So I'm happy with outcome C, which is a wait and watch approach.
Karina, I'm guessing you're next. That's what Mayor's trying to say.
Okay, thank you. I see this from a lot of different angles, and I understand the impact on staff and that this is an occasional problem. In looking at the different solutions or the different processes that each city has, I think we need to start something, even if we roll it out slowly. We have seen Picasso try to come and get a foothold, and they're not going to have the same amount. We have said that the amount of response time they claim would be very easy, but I just don't believe them. Not to say others would have the difficulty in making the same level of compliance, but I think that we should start and looking at something ahead of it. So for example, in San Antonio, they mentioned that it was voluntary or mandatory for the 2 years unless there were code violations. And in San Marino, that they needed 3 additional parties that can respond within an hour. And others, for example, Palm Springs said they have to be within 20 miles, but that could still lead to some traffic delays. So I think we need to get the ball rolling slowly. I think this is necessary. We have seen people try to sneak in, but we need to start somewhere. I think that this could grow to be a bigger issue. Thank you.
And I'm supposed to be recused from the Picasso issue. If this is a Picasso issue, Bob, please advise.
No, I don't believe just because Picasso was mentioned, it becomes a Picasso issue. So unless this discussion about registration somehow impacts one way or another one of your income streams, I'm not seeing a conflict.
Mayor Pro Tem, did that work?
Yeah, congratulations. We hear you loud and clear. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm actually, I think what we're addressing is the single family residence kind of traditional neighborhood kind of situation. And I'm sensing that we don't have a problem yet. And so maybe just keep an eye on it. And if we do, then we'll deal with it. I will say that I think I would put up our code enforcement department, their effectiveness and their professionalism against any other team in any other city. So I'm confident that they're capably dealing with whatever issues are arising right now. And I'm inclined to pay heed to Henry David Thoreau, who famously said that government is best which governs least. So in that spirit, I would move for approval of option 3, which is not create any mandatory or voluntary registration program at this time.
Okay, no, Councilmember Kelly, you have your hand up. Was that intentional?
It was.
Okay, we'll go.
And I will second the motion. Councilmember Quintanilla, I greatly appreciate your perspective that we don't want to get into a position of playing catch up, trying to clean up a problem after it occurs, because that can be much more complex and costly. But I think if we give Mr. Rodriguez a chance to address us, he can probably convince us that code has sufficient tools now to prevent that from happening. And I think we have heard a commitment from staff to alert us if they start to see problems, the current tool for which current tools are not sufficient. But Pedro, could you speak briefly to that question?
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. Pedro Rodriguez, co-compliance supervisor. At this time, we really don't have a problem with absentee owners. When a property is brought to our attention, we go through the normal measures that we would take to identify the property owner, notification. Sometimes we have to take it to a little bit more extreme where we have to dig a little bit deeper till we get to the right parties. But once that's done, we get the properties into compliance. So I'm not seeing a large number of complaints that are coming our way when owners can't notify people. And honestly, people will call when there's a problem. Be rest assured of that your constituents are calling and we're responding to their concerns.
Okay, is there any other discussion?
I move for approval if there's nothing else left to say.
We have a motion and a second already. And there's no more discussion. So can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Nestandi.
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla. Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we will move to public hearings and there are none, no information items. Is there anything additional that anyone needs to bring forward? And seeing none, I do want to mention that our usual schedule is second and fourth Thursday, but because we have the educational opportunity with Cal Cities, we will be not on a meeting on the 2nd, but we will take it instead to September 15th. So our next meeting is September 15th, and this meeting stands adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Stay healthy and hydrate.
Meeting adjourned 6:48 p.m.